Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. This is Tom Newman with toxiCALL, and Thomas is just trying to dial in. He had some connectivity troubles getting in, so hopefully he'll be here with us in just a moment. If you can see me, go ahead and use the little raise hand icon, or see me. Hear me is probably what you're looking for, because this is going to be a one-way conversation for the most part. We will get the questions at the end, and we'll be able to share some information that way, and perhaps even open up to direct dialogue as well. So today we're going to talk about our toxiCALL 4.0 upgrade, so 4.7.40 upgrade, and I believe many of you had attended the user group meeting out in Chicago. I apologize that our team was not able to make it there this year. We were doing lots of things to try and get this upgrade ready. If anyone remembers the toxiCALL 4.7.40 upgrade, that actually required some downtime. So we spent a lot of extra time and work trying to make sure that this upgrade goes a lot easier without having actual downtime where you're not able to capture cases in toxiCALL. So that was very important to us this time. So we believe it's going to be pretty smooth. Each center has some unique environmental issues we have to deal with. So we're going to make sure we do some hand holding and work with everybody on that. So we'll go through here. There is an ability to ask questions through this, and we'll try and get to your questions. We are going to open it up to questions at the end. So talking about the agenda today, what we want to do is we want to actually review the upgrade process. We put documentation out that covers most of this information. They are available as handouts through this presentation as well, so you should see a little handout section. And I don't know if there's another way that it can be downloaded. But in addition to discussing the process, we want to go through the prerequisites, make sure everybody knows the planning requirements required so that your poison center is ready for the upgrade, to make sure that it goes nice and easy. We're going to talk about the details of the actual upload, the upgrade itself for Tox Auto Upload, which is the auto upload process that's changing, as well as the new toxiCALL updates. And we'll get into the upgrade on the changes as well, so the spies will know what to expect. And then we'll actually show the demonstration. We'll demonstrate the actual toxiCALL upgrade. So again, you're welcome to ask questions at any time by just posting them in the question section, and then we'll try and make sure we have time at the end of this presentation for additional questions as well. So some helpful resources, we will be providing these links later in the presentation, plus you'll be able to get them electronically, but it's the implementation documentation. We've released this on the discussion forums already. We also have an online calendar that we're using to schedule the availability. So if you want to get in there and create your calendar entry, you will be able to change it, but we do suggest everybody gets in there and gets that set up so that we can plan our time as well. We're trying to make sure that we're available for your full upgrade in there. If you are doing in a testing environment, we'll work with you offline on that, but we don't want to block the calendar from anyone who's just working on the testing environment. And then there's also getting the latest version of the toxiCALL discussion forums. I'm sorry, the download of the latest software. Those are going to be distributed through our discussion forums. We are controlling the rollout of the Tox Auto Upload and the toxiCALL downloads. The main reason for that is we've had instances in the past where somebody was trying to set up a test environment, pointed it over to their production, and then ended up with a forced upgrade. So we don't want anybody to be caught in that type of a predicament. So we want to make sure we have a very controlled rollout method here. But we will make those downloads available to you in the forums after you register for your upgrade time frame. And I believe I heard Thomas jump on the line. Thomas, you can say good morning and afternoon to everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you, Thomas. So the, excuse me, the overview of this process is there's an entirely new Tox Auto Upload. So the existing auto upload that you're using today will only need to remain in place if you're using that for batch queue, or you're transmitting data to any other outside sources through that auto upload process. This is a new process that we're installing that does secure FTP or SFTP, so many of your IT departments are going to be very happy about that. It also runs as a service. So with the existing auto upload process, you have to install into the workstation. With this new process, you do not. We've also incorporated a new remote status view. So if you've ever gone over to your auto upload machine to find out, is it working? Is it sending data? You can now do that from a remote workstation. It's just a small applet to install in your workstation. With the toxiCALL upgrade, we tried to make sure that this had a few new features for the specialist, but we didn't go overwhelming, so there's not a whole lot of training that's going to be required. We'll show what that looks like today, but the primary things are the new clinical effects and therapies that everybody's expecting to come down the pipeline, and that's the main impetus for the timing of this upgrade. But there's a new follow-up note. And more importantly, for IT departments, we have new password requirements. So they're going to be happy to know that you have some password capabilities that make it a little bit more secure for their needs. And there's a ton of other internal enhancements that we've been working on, and that also set the foundation for some future upgrades that we still have in the works. Now, preparing for the upgrade, all poison centers must be up on 4.7.37 before you can do this upgrade. If you're not running 4.7.37 or later, and I put that in there in between parentheses, not many people are running a later version than that, but you have to be on that version to ensure that this is a smooth upgrade. So if you're running .34 or .20, we strongly advise that that upgrade happens before our team gets involved to do this upgrade. Otherwise, we can't guarantee the same amount of time in the upgrade process here. Microsoft SQL Server 2005 or later is required. We're not putting strong requirements on the version of SQL Server, so most people should be there already. If you're not, you definitely want to reach out to us. That also has a caveat for these new case ID columns. That was brought in as part of the toxiCALL data analysis, and if your center's not running those, we'll manually get those updated for you as well. That's part of the SQL process we'll be doing. And auto upload needs to be moved off of any Windows XP boxes that you're running today. So it needs to be on Windows 7 or later, or can even be installed on Windows Server 2008 Service Pack 1 or later. Now, doing the upgrade, we want to make sure that we have the right people on hand. One of the most important persons for this update is going to be your database administrator or somebody who has administrative rights on your database to be able to do certain things like setting backups and actually performing the backups and setting certain database modes while we're doing the upgrade. That's going to be extremely important. We tried to design this upgrade to allow that person to get out of the call as early as possible. So you'll see that in the update procedures that we've designed. We also need to make sure that we have somebody from your IT staff or someone with equivalent workstation administrative privileges to actually be able to perform the installation. So if you don't have the rights to perform the install, then we won't be able to move forward. So those are going to be two critical people that are going to have to be with us at least through the beginning of the call. Then we're going to need to make sure we have a specialist who has supervisor rights and can go in there and do things such as changing passwords for people if necessary. And on standby, we're going to make sure somebody from IT support who has network administrative privileges there. Different poison centers have different admin rights on their network environments, so we just need to make sure they're on standby if the correct rights are not available. And then, of course, we're going to want to make sure we have the specialist in there so that they can start taking calls with the new system and make sure everything's working properly. The upgrade overview is really, we're focused on making sure you don't have any downtime. So to be able to let that happen, specialists will be able to start by downloading cases to their local database. Even if you're using Bypass Local, you'll be able to bring cases down to the local database and then set the workstations and set toxiCALL to work local only mode. That means that each workstation that has downloaded those individual cases will be able to continue to manage those cases and create new cases. And after the update is done, they'll be able, just on their workstation, once their particular workstation is done, they'll be able to push those same cases back up to the network. That's a really new feature that we built in this time around, and it wasn't allowed in the past. So that's how we're able to allow people to continue to work local only and then be able to push it back up to the network database. And we want to make sure that everybody schedules their time with the CAS support team to do the upgrade using the online calendar that we put together. Upgrade concerns. The main thing that we're really worried about is that you do have a full back of that database, and we're going to work on that with your DBA to make sure your database is completely backed up. There's a set point in the upgrade procedure that we want that to happen, which is basically after everybody's in work local only. That way, if something does go wrong, we know we have a good point to fall back to, and everybody can go back to that on the network database there. Also, we need to be concerned with previous installations of toxiCALL. What we found is that some people, when they installed toxiCALL, they left the C drive location that has a default in there when pointing to the network system location. If that is identified, you're going to have to do an uninstall and a reinstall of toxiCALL. We found in that process that the uninstall did not require a reboot of toxiCALL, but there's some certain caveats around that. So we'll want to make sure we work together on that. We need to make sure that poison centers are not trying to push the upgrade package. If you do that, we're going to have really limited abilities to be able to support you and help you along that path. We know very little about pushing packages. We know we want to try and control this upgrade. We want to check certain things along the way. It's all outlined in our documentation. And if we're doing push packages, it really limits our ability to do that. And you're basically just throwing it out there to everybody at the same time. So while I know that people like to do that for these upgrades, this is not an upgrade we advise using that for. Future upgrades, probably so. And there's a feature in toxiCALL that was used many years ago called Tox Auto Upgrade. Some people are still using that today. The advantage on that is that it actually points to the upgrade package and allows you, when you start toxiCALL, to perform that upgrade. The downside to that is the person logged in must have the ability to install upgrades on that workstation. So it's a great feature to use if it works in your environment. So it's definitely something you can consider. It's also a little bit more controlled, that the upgrade does not perform until somebody actually tries to initiate it manually. The new auto upload process is called Tox Auto Upload. It's going to run as a service, so it basically runs in the background on that box, and there's a separate viewer application that goes along with that. That viewer can be viewed on that workstation or server, wherever Tox Auto Upload's installed, can be installed on another workstation. It will no longer run on a Windows XP machine. So if you've got to move from Windows XP, now's the time to do it, at least for that particular box. toxiCALL will continue to still run in Windows XP, but that's going to be the primary focus, is making sure you've got a box that you're going to install your Tox Auto Upload on. To keep things simple, we recommend keeping it on the same box today and then moving it to a server later. But if you need to move it to a server now, just be prepared, tell us where that box is. Let's make sure we have connectivity to it and we can keep on moving. The original auto upload is still used if you're transmitting data to toxiTrack and BatchQ, as I mentioned earlier. So if you are dealing with toxiTrack centers, we will want to coordinate their upgrade along with your individual poison center's upgrade as well, because both of those need to be done in tandem. So 4.7.40 is the latest version that we're going to be installing. Again, you've got to be running 4.7.37. Previous installs, as I mentioned earlier, we have to be careful about that. May encounter problems, and we'll have to talk about how to do the uninstall and reinstall to make sure those workstations are pointing properly. If you're running 4.7.20 or 4.7.34, again, can't emphasize enough, please upgrade to the latest version. And we prefer an uninstall and a reinstall if you're running 4.7.20. That's going to make sure you have the cleanest packages that are being installed today. So before starting the upgrade process, what we're going to do is our CAS team is going to coordinate with NPDS. We need to tell them that you're coming out of the binary auto upload and moving to what they call the auto upload XML process. So we're going to give them the lead time about 30 minutes before your scheduled start time, that they will actually shut down the old service and turn it over. So that means that you will want to stop your auto upload process about an hour before turnover time. The spies should also begin to start working local only, maybe 15 minutes, 30 minutes before your update time, because once everybody's in work local only mode, that's when the DBA can perform the full backups on your database. But we want to make sure everybody's captured the cases they want on their local, they're not doing any changes to the network database, and that's when the DBA will perform the backup. And we mentioned the 2 backup modes to be performed. Then what will happen, the DBA is going to set the database recovery mode to simple while we do the upgrades, and that's going to help minimize the amount of time and space required on your server when the data columns are changed and the new data model is updated. We'll be there the whole time holding everybody's hands and walking through this process and providing our guidance, especially if something is seen out of the ordinary. So again, scheduled install time. Make sure that everybody's in work local only mode at that time. We're going to confirm with the DBA that the database backups have been done at the right time. So again, that's after everybody's changed over to work local only mode. And they're going to make sure that the database recovery model is set and the schema settings are set. Those verifications will be done with the DBA. So again, this is why it's important to have the DBA or somebody with like rights available at the beginning of the call. So performing the auto upload and upgrade, it's going to be installed and then configured with the auto upload, and that is the Tox auto upload package. After that's installed, we're going to have the DBA verify that we had the proper rights to make the update changes to the data model that we could. And then the viewer can be installed on other workstations. We suggest installing the viewer later on down the road. After you get the Poison Specialist back up and running with the new version, then you can go around and install the viewer to whatever workstations you'd like to have it available. The toxiCALL upgrade, we are going to do something similar with the first workstation. That'll be the most critical to have the DBA available. After the 4.7.40 version is run on that first workstation, then we're going to have the DBA confirm that the data structure updates were updated properly. It's also going to be important to note that if anybody tries to upgrade to or tries to run toxiCALL 4.7.37 or earlier, they won't be able to get in. And we don't want anybody to try and run that. Just keep them out so we don't get them dealing with a bunch of errors, and now we have a secondary issue to deal with. So that's going to be extremely important to communicate that to everyone. Then we have the specialists go into toxiCALL. We confirm the new fields are there. We confirm Micromedics integration is working. We'll do some testing on that first workstation. We want to make sure we're comfortable with that first workstation before we proceed on, and we might spend 10 or 15 minutes doing that. Once that we're comfortable with the first workstation, the database administrator can return back to full recovery model, and then they can drop off from the call, just remaining on standby in case we need anything else from the DBA. Then going around, you'll be able to start upgrading the additional workstations, and you can do that one or multiples at a time. And any way that you see fit is going to be the best way to get those workstations online. Our personal preference is we get the specialists who are currently working local only, have them stand away from their box for a moment, perform the upgrade, let them get back in there, test the workstation, upload their cases, and make sure they can function. First priority is getting the call specialist back up and running, and then moving over to the administrative boxes. toxiCALL and Convert Notes and toxiCALL Data Analysis both have upgrades available. We have links to get to that section in our discussion forums. Those are currently out there and available today. So if you need to upgrade any of those packages, they will need to be upgraded for 4.7.40. They won't have compatibility with previous versions any longer. We also have some helpful links here where we have the implementation documentation. Again, that's been provided through this webinar as well, so hopefully you've been able to download it. There's also a section to, the second item here called calendly.com is where we're doing the online upgrade. This link will be provided, and I believe Thomas will be able to push that out through the chat session to everybody. We can get all those links copied over. And then the last link is the one that's a controlled link. That is for the latest download of toxiCALL. You'll receive that after you make your calendar time schedule for toxiCALL. Then we'll make the download link available to your team so that you can start doing the download and do any internal testing if you choose. Getting to the changes within toxiCALL itself, just want to give some very high level, and this is included in one of those two documents provided. What we're doing, let's see, hopefully my mouse is showing on here. Let's see if I have a way to show that even stronger. All right, here we go with a little spotlight. So what you'll notice is in the clinical effects, anything that's been retired or obsolete is going to have a -R in front of that. So what we're trying to do is make sure that those are available for the specialists who need to code those or manage old cases, and be able to include that in there. We've also added this follow-up. You'll see where that's entered in a moment, but it's going to come up and show in the bottom right-hand side of this case. So once you open that case, you'll be able to see that follow-up note. And just a side effect feature, we allow you to double-click on this to be able to open the save window if you want to save the case. And let's see here. So now I've got to do my page changing this way. All righty. So now we've changed the layout of the save window when you're in a case. We did this to make it a little bit cleaner in terms of the workflow, as well as adding space for this follow-up note. So you'll see that when you go to save a case in open or quick save status, you'll be able to type in a follow-up note here. We've also changed how the follow-up time works. So the 3 dots and everything else here is the same as what you're used to seeing today. We've changed the quick buttons for the future times to a drop down. That gives us a little bit more granularity, that you have more options available there now. And we've changed the close button, I think here, or yeah, I believe we called it close, to call it discard and save. So we wanted to make sure that we are very clear with what we're doing in this window. So it's a little bit of a workflow change in how you can do things. There are still keyboard shortcuts when you come in. So as soon as you start in here, if you hit C for the status to go to close, and then just press the Enter key, that's the quickest way to close the case in the closed status. So as soon as the save window is open, press C on the keyboard for close, press Enter, and that performs the save operation. The search window has also been updated primarily to show the follow-up note in here. So now we have a whole new column in here that displays your follow-up note. And you'll be able to see that when you go into the case, as we saw. But we also wanted to put a little bit more emphasis on when cases are assigned. So most of you today see a black lettered specialist if they are the initial SPI, and it turns to red if the case has been assigned to that SPI. Well, we couldn't figure out who was initial SPI anymore, so what we've done now is we've added to that red column. We can see it's still assigned, but we put in parentheses the initial SPI. So that's just for reference if you want to find out who the initial SPI was just from the search window. Those are the primary changes there. If you're running 4.7.20 or 4.7.34, you're going to get this new default search criteria. I'm not going to put much emphasis on this today, as that information was documented and released several years ago, but that's a really cool feature to use if you're not using that today. Clinical effects. So these windows can be resized if you don't have your regular real estate that you're used to seeing, but notice in here that we've got the -R for retired in here. And you can see coma is one of those that's retired. We tried to find a solution that was simple because these are kind of going to be obsolete next year, but we didn't want it to be too intrusive. So we're trying to maintain that compatibility with the historical cases as well as going forward to the future. The other thing we had to do is clinical effects and therapies now have their same two tabs as they have in the past. They've been expanded to include the new clinical effects of therapies in the search window, but the therapies are now all by themselves on their own tab. So previously outcome and therapies were combined. We've just pushed outcome to the scenarios tab now. So you're looking at scenarios tab and you can see it's just pushed there in the same order in every way that you're used to seeing it from before. Recent cases window is something that doesn't get enough attention by some poison centers. It's a nice mini search window, but we made a few changes here to make sure that it was easy to get to as well as provided a little bit more usability. So if you're not using it today, when you're in the search window, you can press Control-R to get to it, or you can use the View menu option and drop down to recent cases window. But what we've done is we've added the ability to search across multiple substances, and you can configure how many substances deep you want to search. And a lot of specialists like to search by that substance name. So it's going to default to substance here. So all you would have to do is type in your substance name, hit search, and if you tell it to search 3 substances deep, any case that finds that text in the substance name or description, or your verbatim there, it's going to pull up that substance. This is also nice for entering in phone numbers, because if you type in the phone number here and they don't pull up, you can quickly create a new case, and that will make it nice and easy to automatically populate the phone number so you don't have to type it in there twice. But it's a quick way to find out if you've got repeat callers. And there's other search options in here by the patient name, which is nice because it'll search, if you click on the name column, or actually you do the name, if you search by the name here rather, then it'll search by the patient name and the caller name for you automatically. So it makes searching a whole lot easier than trying to use the search window for doing follow-ups and also answering calls. We've also added some more details on the healthcare facilities in this window as well, if you are using it today. For the password management, we've got the ability to require a password change the next time they log in. So if your IT department requires you to enforce those new rules, it's not going to be enforced out of the box. People will have to go in and change their password. When they change their password, it will require the new rules. If your specialists aren't sure about their password casing today, you might want to ask them to change their password, make sure it's all lowercase. It'll just make the transition go a little bit easier. But then you can require a password change after, say, 90 days. You can require accounts to expire. So a lot of these options are going to work the same. If you are using the, they're going to be more intuitive or required by your IT departments. We're just trying to address some of their needs. If you choose to use this net login name, which many centers do, then the password is not being typed in. So you may want to get them to change the password so it meets the new rules, but the net login name will still allow you to bypass the login and go straight into toxiCALL if they've logged in properly to their Windows workstation. And here we just have a simple reminder at the login screen that these passwords are case sensitive. That's going to be critical. As soon as you go to toxiCALL 4.7.40, everybody's password is case sensitive. I should mention one more thing on this screen. Passwords are going to require an uppercase, a lowercase, and at least one number in there. And we're considering options in the future to require special characters and some other requirements in there. We also tried to simplify the license request screen. So now we just got a big button to request the license and a big button to apply the license. That hopefully will simplify this request process for users where we had things kind of jumbled up on the side over here. So next, what I'd like to do is pass it over to Thomas Carmelo and have him do a demonstration of the upgrade process. That should be a simple process that you can actually see what's going on and how simple this upgrade process is. So Thomas, your turn, sir.
Okay, and Tom, please let me know if you're having any audio issues hearing me at all. I'll go ahead and switch over to myself here. One moment. Okay, so this is our demonstration workstation here, and the first thing I want to point out is that we're running the current release version of 4.7.37, and this would be just standard specialists working at their workstation and preparing for the upgrade. So first thing they will need to do is download any cases they wish to manage to their local database and go into the work local only mode. So for this example, I'm going to go ahead and download case number 3 here to my local database. Notice here now I'm on my local database. I have case number 3. And something I want to point out about this case in particular is the use of a clinical effect that's going to be retired with the new selections. So here we have cardiac arrest. And we'll come back to this case after the upgrade and show how that clinical effect displays as retired. So now that I have the case downloaded to my local database, I'm going to select File, Database, then Work Local Only. We'll get a message here asking, we want to go into Work Local Database Only. We select Yes. It's going to close the search window. That's okay. We'll say Yes. Notice now the network database icon is a gray color with a red X. And up here at the top, we see network down, local only. So we'll want to confirm we're in the work local only mode. And if I click my local database here, I see I still have that case to work with. So at this point, we'll just assume that I've done some work on this case and now it's time to upgrade my workstation. I'm workstation number 1. So we'll just exit toxiCALL. We will not attempt to upload the case to the network. We'll just exit toxiCALL, leaving it on our local. So the first installation we're going to perform here for this demonstration is the Tox Auto Upload service, and then we'll upgrade toxiCALL afterwards, just as Tom showed in the slideshow there. So we'll run the Tox Auto Upload version 107 setup package. And we'll just assume we're on a server or the dedicated workstation for Tox Auto Upload. We'll accept the license agreement. Now, part of this installation is going to require the installation wizard connect to your SQL Server database. This allows the installation process to create any new data tables it needs to create, add records, things of that nature. So we'll go ahead and put in that information here. We'll want to ensure we select a complete installation. Okay, once that installation is finished, you'll notice there's a new desktop icon for the status viewer. We'll go ahead and launch Tox Auto Upload now, and that's just going to launch the status viewer and allow me to configure the service. Okay, we're notified there's no existing configuration. That's fine. Okay, at the top here, we're going to see that there's a configuration section here for the database connection settings and the center code configuration. So we'll click the three-dot button for the database connection. And just like you saw in the wizard, we'll put in our SQL connection information here. And again, as Tom mentioned, this will be very important to have a DBA available to ensure you can get these settings put in properly. All right, we'll test our connection now. Verify it's working and select OK. You may receive a message that talks about the license being expired. Essentially, toxCALL is initializing the license for the Tox Auto Upload process, and it runs through the default center code 0 and 900 that comes with toxiCALL. So it's just messaging on those center codes. So you can disregard this message, and I believe it's in the documentation as well to just ignore that. That's not a problem. Okay, right now we just have our one center code for demonstration. Say OK to that. Down here for the destination, you're going to see two options. You're going to see NPDS production and beta. We're going to be sending to production when we do your upgrades. So you'll select production. And I'm just going to put in some dummy information here, but you'll put in your username and password that's provided to you from NPDS. It will be your current existing username and password that you use for auto upload today. So you don't need to obtain a new password or username. We're going to leave the default settings here for how often we check for new cases, how often we check for acknowledgement file, maximum number of cases, etc. If you have a specific reason that you need to exclude certain cases, maybe from previous years, we do offer the ability to put in a where clause on that, and we can work with you to configure that if necessary. So we'll go ahead and save that. Tox Auto Upload is going to restart. And what you're seeing here is our status viewer. It's somewhat similar to what you currently have, where you're going to see the log messages stored in the database. Again, we're going to see a message regarding the license for 0 and 900. You can just disregard that. Excuse me. Notice down below our status viewer showing that auto upload is currently offline. And that's because, as a reminder, this is now running as a service. So the status viewer is separate from the service itself. So we'll open up the services application for the workstation. And notice now we have a toxiCALL auto upload service. It's set to automatically start when the workstation boots, but it's not currently running. So we'll go ahead and start it just to kind of demonstrate here how that's going to look. Okay, notice now the status is showing a green light and it's online. It shows its last heartbeat. We see here that it scanned out a case, tried to send it up to NPDS, but of course we're using dummy information, so it's unable to connect. But that's a quick way to verify that it's installed correctly and it's doing its job properly. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and exit out of the status viewer here. Okay, the next part of the installation, once we verify Tox Auto Upload is installed and configured, is toxiCALL itself. So we'll go ahead and pop back into our upgrade files folder here, and we're going to run the 4.7.40 setup package. First screen you'll see here is confirming that you want to perform an upgrade. Say yes. Straightforward of just selecting next to start that upgrade and confirming any user rights that need to be authorized to perform the upgrade. Okay, that's finished. And we'll go ahead and launch toxiCALL. The first time you launch toxiCALL, it's going to perform some updates, so it may take a little bit longer than normal, and that's normal. Notice these 3 tables are going to update, and I believe that's in the documentation as well. And that's in regards to the new clinical effects and therapies. Okay, so we saw a question earlier, does specialists need to update their password immediately or use a new password after the upgrade? As you saw, I did not change my password from the 4.7.37 to 4.7.40, and I was able to log in automatically. So those password rules only apply if you go to update that password through the SPY table. We'll go ahead and go to our local database since we know we had a case there from our previous session. And I'm just going to open up this case here. First thing I want to point out is coming back to the clinical effects. Notice now cardiac arrest has that little R next to it. That's your indicator that that's a retired clinical effect. And you'll notice the same for therapies here. One of the therapies is not retired. So I'm going to click into clinical effects here to open the screen up. And I'm sure as you are curious, here are the new clinical effects added into the system. So notice we didn't have to do any work manually on the SQL Server database. That's all performed automatically. So at this point, I'm just going to save the case. Notice here, as Tom pointed out, we have a updated layout for the save case screen. We can put in a follow-up note, so let's go ahead and do that here. And we'll give it a follow-up time of tomorrow. We'll go ahead and save this case now. And that case will upload to the network database, even though the network database has been updated. So hopefully here we're able to demonstrate that center downtime will be minimized by allowing specialists to work in local only mode. They'll exit toxiCALL, have their installation updated, come right back into toxiCALL, and they can upload their case data up to the network there. I'm going to go ahead and make this widget just a little bit bigger here. Notice now there's a follow-up note column next to the follow-up date and time. Specialists now will be able to view that follow-up note easily from the search window. And I'm going to come back into this case now and show you where that note appears within the chart. Notice down here next to where you might see labs or linked case files, we have that follow-up note available. Okay. So in a nutshell, that's the upgrade process. It's pretty straightforward and simple as long as you have all of your resources available, such as your database administrator and your network administrators. And at this point, Tom, I don't know if there's anything else you want to show at this demonstration, or we might be able to move to answering questions people may have.
Thomas, I was answering questions online and I didn't pay close attention. So did you demonstrate the ability to, or how specialists go to work local only mode?
Yes, I did.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Perfect, so that's great. That's exactly what I wanted to see there, and appreciate that. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna go to answering questions. We've tried to answer questions through the written form, but I'm gonna open that up a little bit more through audio. First, if Susan Smolinski is still with us, she's with the New Mexico Poison Center. She's on the line. She's actually been involved with an upgrade. So I'd like to open the floor to her for just a moment. I believe we got all of her specialists back online within the first 90 minutes after we started. So Susan, do you have anything you'd like to add about this upgrade that might be helpful?
Sure. Yeah, it was fairly seamless. It was quick. We're a small center, so it was really easy to get everybody up and running quickly. I was there to help the DBA install the upgrades at each workstation. You know, once the first one was done, the rest were easy. The only glitch we had was that we had the thing Tom mentioned where you had to delete the old version, uninstall the old version before you install the new version. But I just went around and did that while everything else was going on, so it was not an issue. And everybody adapted to it very quickly. Yeah, so it went well.
Excellent. Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that. And let's see here. So now we're going to start going over to questions. So there's a little hand raise option within your viewer panel there. So if you use the hand raise option, we'll try and use that to open up your mic so that you can ask questions directly. So let me get back to that over here on my screen. And let's see, Raul Rigo is going to be the first one in the list.
Your passcode. Thank you for calling. Goodbye.
Okay, so Raul's been knocked off the list. Sorry about that, Raul. Dwayne Keeling is next in line. Dwayne, your audio is available if you have a question. Okay, we're going to move on then. So I believe I had Linda Kalin had a question, but jumped in my list. Linda, I'll come back to you if you raise your hand again. Okay, Linda, you are on the mic.
Just wondered if remote workers need to bring their actual laptop in to the center during this upgrade.
What method do you currently use for updating remote workers?
VPN to a remote desktop.
Okay, if they're, well, how would you do the upgrade without the qualifications we've had today?
We just push it. The previous upgrades, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just pushed.
So the real answer is, in theory, you don't need to have them bring the workstation in to be upgraded. It can be upgraded at any point the same way they would connect up to the network database. They just will need to have their workstation upgraded. If you're using a push package on that, we highly suggest that you wait to install and create your, wait to enable your push package till after you've got your primary workflow back in line and everybody's running 4.7.40 successfully. Then you can work on your push package to get that distributed. But again, we have limited knowledge on that, so hopefully that was helpful.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Susan again. We had remote workstations, and our DBA is able to VPN into their workstations at home, so he just did the upgrade for them one at a time that way, so they didn't have to bring their equipment in.
Super. Thanks, Susan.
Thank you both. Raul, I see your hand raised again, but your audio pin is not in. Up, there we go. Maybe I do have audio now.
Can you hear me?
Okay, Raul, we can hear you, sir.
Oh, okay. I don't know how I can knock out before. The user-defined fields, that will remain, right? Or do we have to do anything with that?
You should not have to do anything special with that. Those will all remain, and we're updating your data model in addition to what's already in place there. So it should be no changes there. Okay,
and when I do the upgrade, that will work for ToxiNet, but it will also work for the previous year's archives as far as the user-defined fields, right?
There's a process for getting the archives updated, and our support team will be able to help walk you through that process.
Yep. All right, that's good enough. All right, I'm good.
Great. Thank you, Raul. All right. Okay, let's see here who's next in line. We've got Jim Mowry on the line next.
Hey, Tom, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. If we have like archive SQL Server databases and or other custom databases, do those need to be specially upgraded?
If you have custom databases, I'm not sure I understand because this is certainly outside of the box is what you're talking about, correct?
Well, yeah, it's basically like when I've made a special database, a local database, basically just for a study or something like that. I've downloaded cases into it. The other one is that we had an archive database for some of our earlier cases, and then I decided not to use the archive anymore. Should I like import my archive into that, into the main database?
No, if you have archive databases that are stored in Microsoft Access, as I mentioned with Raul a moment ago about archives, there's a similar process that you'll be able to use to get those database structures in line with a new data structure. So that's through the data structure update. So that does have a process our support team can help you with.
Okay. Well, one of my archives is actually a SQL Server database.
Same difference there.
Okay.
Yep.
Good enough. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Okay, next we're going to Pam. Pam, please forgive me. I always mess up the pronunciation of your last name. I'm not even going to try right now.
Okay.
Pam V.
Yeah, my question is related to what was just asked, only this is the local client database. They made some sort of customization for their local database, and I know in the past, if you do anything, if install a new client, you have to replace the database that gets installed, or they can't log in. So if they're working locally and adding case to their local customized database, after they run the upgrade, is the local database changed in any way?
Well, after the upgrade, the local database is upgraded, absolutely. So it gets new data columns in there. If there's additional customizations outside of the user, what we call UCFs, or user configurable fields, we don't know what's going on there, so I can't guarantee what's going to happen. Certainly something you're going to want to explore in your testing environment. So I believe you guys are working on a testing environment, so let's try and figure out what's going on there, and maybe you can get some more details in terms of what customizations are done. If it's user configurable requirements or user configurable fields that are being used, you should be good. Anything outside of that is going to require further exploration.
So the person that made the customization is no longer with our organization. So is there, how do I find out what customization is actually in the database?
I don't have a good answer for you on that immediately. Let's go ahead and take this conversation offline and talk about it, because it's going to be your center, and maybe we can try and help figure out what's going on over there. And what we may need you to do is, if you have a template database you're pushing over, we may ask you to send that over to our support team to evaluate it.
Okay.
All righty, great, thank you. Okay, we have a hand raised by Jeannie Jaramillo. However, you don't have an audio pin entered, so I can't enable your audio. And I'm going to go back to Dwayne Keeling. All right, Dwayne, you're on, sir. Dwayne, if you can hear me, we can't hear you. Okay, any other questions? Go ahead and raise your hand, please. Okay, and Thomas, did we get all the questions answered that came through the typed questions?
I'm working right now to answer those. That was me typing, and I apologize. I tried to mute my line there if anybody was annoyed by that. Yeah, so we've got some rolling in there as well that I'm trying to get answered. So Heather had a question here. Will open cases still default to save to local?
Okay, so open cases, the way that works is going to continue to work the way it does today. So if you use bypass local mode, it will default to the network where it currently does today. If you do not use the bypass local mode, it will continue to default to local. The one difference on both of those scenarios is when you go to work local only mode, it'll default down to the local during that work local only mode, so that you can continue to work without requiring the network. And I'm going to try and enable Dwayne again. The hand is raised. Dwayne, let's see if we can hear you this time, sir.
Dwayne has typed in on the questions area that he has got his answer. He's got his answer. So thank you.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you, Dwayne.
All right. Next question we have here is, does the follow-up note disappear?
The follow-up note will disappear when the case is closed. And I have another question here from Jeanette Trella. I've enabled your mic, Jeanette.
Hi, guys. Thank you for this. This has been really helpful. Just a question for the retired clinical effects for the SPY entry after January 1st. Is there a way to eventually, I understand the need to keep them behind the scenes for data compatibility, but is there a way to take those off of the SPY screen to try to not make that clinical effects field busier than what it already is?
We're evaluating how we want to handle that in the future. The original specifications really didn't call out how they wanted that dealt with. So we're still trying to work on our own solution to be a little bit more complex than what was put in place there. So I have some ideas on that. It may require a future upgrade to toxiCALL. So that would be the bad news. But the good news is we've had lots of requests for additional data fields. And what's not being published with this upgrade, because I didn't want to confuse everyone, we're adding, when we update the data model, we're adding places for things like date of birth, exposure zip code, medical field, US MSDS numbers, and EPA numbers. We've added a bunch of new data collection fields, and we'll be working on a new version of toxiCALL to be able to capture data in these new data collection fields. So at that time, we would anticipate a cleaner interface to get rid of the retired fields and only display them if you load up an older case where they're relevant.
Gotcha, thank you.
Great, thank you, Janet.
Okay, our next question here comes from Ryan McNally asking, if we have a test SQL database, is there any way to install the toxiCALL auto uploader on a test server and connect to the test database? Tom, I can address that one if you like.
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Ryan, NPDS does offer a beta server for testing. You may need to reach out to their support team to speak with them further, but in regards to Tox Auto Upload, you're more than welcome to install the service on a test server and configure the service to connect to their beta location and underneath that destinations dropdown. You'll need to speak with NPDS though in regards to a username and password and make sure they actually set up a testing destination for you on their end. But you're definitely more than welcome to do that. In regards to a toxiCALL test database, we don't have records of any testing databases our clients create or maintain. So you might have to work with your internal team to find out if there's a set of testing data that you'd like to send out, rather than connecting to your production database. And honestly, Ryan, I would recommend that you speak with us offline a little bit further about your plans in regards to the test auto upload, just to make sure that we have all the bases covered there.
Excellent. Thank you, Thomas. So we have about 7 more minutes scheduled in this webinar. I definitely want to keep this open and we'll allow you to continue asking questions, either written or orally. If you just raise your hand, I'll open the mic again. And we did record this meeting, so hopefully we're going to be able to distribute the link on this meeting so that we'll put it up there on our discussion forum so it can be passed around to anybody who was not able to attend and make sure there are any questions answered. If you do have questions in addition to this, we recommend you send us an email to support@toxicall.com and we'll try and get the questions back to you. If you try to get to our forums today, the one issue that we want to mention is that our servers were upgraded. So as soon as this meeting is done, I've got to do a few changes to make sure that our servers are pointing back over so everybody can get to the forums. If you try to go through forums.toxicall.com, I believe using the CASCO, cas-co.net domain will work, but that'll be in line. And then I believe Thomas has an additional question or comment to put up on the table as well.
Sure. Well, there's 2 more questions here. I'll address Raul's question first. It's a quick one. He's asking, if I have custom display searches, will they have to do anything special? Will they stay? If you have custom displays built within toxiCALL, those will remain functional as expected under the new version. So there's nothing special you should need to do there. It might be a good idea to test them and just make sure that they're working as you expect. And Raul writes, thanks. Not a problem, Raul. Okay, Heather has a question here. Can you please review the work local only process? Yeah, Tom, if we have a minute, I'd be more than happy to show that again on my screen here.
Okay, great. So let's go ahead and do that, Thomas. Thank you.
Okay, Heather, so what we're going to do here is we are in toxiCALL under just normal operating conditions. We're going to select a case or cases that we would like to download to our local database to continue managing while we perform the upgrade. So I'm going to select case number 3 here. I'm going to come up here and select the download icon here. It'll tell me that one case was copied. And when I select OK, notice now our location switches to local database, and we definitely have that case now on our local database. From this point, we're going to click on File, Database, Work Local Only. You're going to get a confirmation message asking if you do want to switch to Work Local Database Only. We select Yes. This message pops up here just saying, are you sure you want to close the search window? It's trying to close that and refresh it automatically. We say, yes, that's fine. We understand we have a case on our local. Notice now our red network database icon switches to this gray icon with the red X showing you are offline with the network. And we also have a confirmation message stating network down, local only at the top. If we select the local database icon now, we are open now to working with that case. And if you come into this case and make an edit and go to save it, I just want to confirm with you how that save screen is going to change slightly. Notice now the Save to Network Now option is disabled. So we're only able to keep it local. Select Save. And that remains on our local. Again, just a reminder, when it's time to upgrade your workstation, do not try to upload the cases before you upgrade. Just exit toxiCALL. It's going to warn you have cases on your local. That's fine. Continue to exit toxiCALL, perform the upgrade, then come back in and upload those cases to the network.
And Thomas, before you close out the work local only scenario, can you go ahead and change your workstation over to using bypass local and show the slight difference that would occur there?
Sure. Okay, so
actually, go ahead and exit. Thomas, go ahead and exit toxiCALL. Let's start clean with this sample, if you don't mind, please.
Okay, so the same steps here, File, and we've downloaded a case to our local. So we're going to go Database, Work Local Only.
I'm sorry, Thomas, you're going to want to go back to showing how to download the case because that's where the primary difference is.
Not a problem. Okay, starting fresh here. We know we're in bypass local mode because we have the indicator bypass here at the top. And if we're interested in working with case number 3, we have it selected here. Notice now there's no download icon on the toolbar. So you'll actually need to go to File, Download from Network. We hide that icon on the toolbar just to discourage people from downloading to their local while working in bypass, but you definitely still can for downtime. So we're going to download from network. It says you're in bypass local. Are you sure you want to do this? For this special circumstance, yes, we do. Okay, the case is copied. Now we're on our local database. We have that case downloaded, and now we can switch to work local only. We allow the search window to close. Yep, and then we can reopen it again, and we are still in bypass. We see here at the top, and we're also in local only mode.
And from here, the specialist will continue to work in work local only mode until their workstation is upgraded to the latest version of toxiCALL. And I'm going to leave the mic open for just a few moments here and see if any more hands come up with any additional questions. That's all the content we had to share today, and we'll be posting more on the forums. So if you don't already, please make sure that when our forums come back online that you go in there and be sure to watch the topics and the discussions that are of interest to you, most especially the download section, which is where we post our information and the system tables and updates for generic codes, things like that. Watching those forums will get an email sent over to you so that that's the notification process that we're using today. And when we have significant things like this particular upgrade, we sent a notification out to any registered user on our system. So the emails went out that way for our notifications. And that's what we're using today for our mailing list, if you will, that we prefer not to use often. We don't like to spam anybody because I don't like it myself. So we do use that for the notifications. So please make sure that people who need our communications are registered in the forums.
Okay, we had a couple more questions pop in, and I went ahead and answered those directly. One of them was, will we lose cases that are on the local database if we perform an uninstall? The answer is no. The uninstall process does not delete your local database. The other question was, do we use the new clinical effects and therapies as soon as the upgrade is completed? Yeah, those selections are available to you as soon as the upgrade is completed.
So one of an earlier center that had upgraded, they were asking about the old cases. They did not want to have to recode their code cases that they've already been managing. So we're going to leave that to be your own business decision in terms of when you start coding with the new clinical effects versus not coding with them. All right, great. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for your time. We appreciate your feedback, and we look forward to a successful upgrade. Don't forget to schedule, and we'll be in touch and get this worked out. Everyone have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.